I'm Peter from the Daily Rios.
I'm Eric from Longbox Review, and this is Peter and Eric's Legion Project Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Legion Project Podcast. I am your co-host, Eric, along with Mr. Podcast himself, Mr. Peter Rios. Hey, Peter.
Hey, Eric. How you doing tonight?
Good, good. How about you?
Pretty good, pretty good. This will be, as I mentioned before we started recording, my last Legion Podcast episode from South Philly.
Did you hear the collective, aww?
I know, nobody cares. It's all right. I care. I don't know what the acoustics are in the new apartment, Eric. I don't know what's going to happen.
Oh, no. We'll have to do some test recordings or something.
All good. All good.
So how long have you been in South Philly now?
11 years.
Ooh, wow. That's half a generation.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of September, I'll be gone. Beginning of October, I'll be in the new place. So our next episode will be recorded from a strange new location. I'll just have to get used
undisclosed location.
Right. Yeah, in a bunker. I'm just going to hide from the United States. Yes.
Now, is this a long move away from where you're at, or relatively short?
It's outside of Philadelphia, but it's not. It'll take 20 minutes to get there.
Oh, okay.
How about you? How's your night?
Oh, pretty good. Works very busy right now. So I'm juggling getting all this time of year is a big deal for my company. We have a big conference and lots of activity going on, and so I'm busy working on that kind of stuff and trying to get all of these podcasts out, especially since we had this goal in mind for the Legion Project Podcast.
Yeah, you've been prolific.
It's really funny because I used to just do basically an episode every 2 weeks. That was my schedule. And then for some reason this year, I somehow have been able to, for the most part, put out a weekly show for the last few months, and sometimes even multiple episodes a week. And this actually will be, well, by the time people listen to this, I will have had a couple weeks where I had 2 or 3 episodes come out a week. Not my intent, but it just worked out that way just because of timing. And, some episodes I do on my show are timely, and so I need to get them out by a certain time, like the previous episode.
Right.
And you, at the time of this recording, Peter, you just released a new, since we're talking about time, a Timeline Tuesday episode, which I just finished listening to before we started talking.
Yeah, I like my history episodes.
I love it. I love it when you put out one of those.
It's fun to go back and see what's being celebrated anniversary wise. Mm-hmm. I learn a lot, actually. It fills in the gaps here and there. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of my own podcast.
Well, if you can't be your own show's biggest fan, well, what's the point, right?
Right. Speaking of anniversary, like you just mentioned, we might as well dip into it. This is our anniversary episode. Happy 1 year, Eric.
Yay!
12 episodes.
Yeah. And boy, let me tell the folks out there, Peter's been a taskmaster. Just kidding. Just kidding. Trying to get these 12 episodes out during the month of September for our 1 year anniversary. So that was a great goal, and I was happy to accommodate as best I could. I'm sorry, Peter, that we ended up basically right up against the wire there, I think.
Well, it's also my fault, taking my time editing episodes. We could have released some of these episodes, weeks in advance. But, we have lives. We have other podcasts.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I do feel bad for you because you do all the editing. And as we record this, that gives you about a week to edit this particular episode. So.
Right. I'm just moving.
I know. Exactly. You're still teaching, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You got that going on. I don't know how you do it.
I can do it. No problem.
Well,
just got to put my mind to it.
Yeah. Well, you also, I don't know how you guys did it on CGS, but you did what, 5 episodes a week there for a while?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine.
They were long episodes too.
Yeah.
So what did you, if you looked back on this last year, what do you think? Is it too early to talk about what do you think of the podcast or the Legion Baxter run to date? I mean, we're going to talk about issue 12 in this episode, but I don't know. Do you want to do an overview now, or you want to save it till after our episode discussion?
Well, I'll be ill prepared either way, so let's just jump right into it. Well, I'll tell you what. I realized this about myself, Peter. I thought I was a pretty good reader, observer of comics, but I'll compliment you greatly here. But you put me to shame. The connections you make, the observations you have about these issues, these stories. I've been very impressed, and although I'm not sure why I should be impressed after having listened to you on other shows, I should know better. But very impressed and humbled by your skills. So I appreciate being a listener of yours doing this, but also just learning how to be a better reader.
Oh, that's cool. I don't think you have anything to worry about, though. I mean, you also bring a lot to the table. And it's challenging. I think that, this 30-year-old series, we're both finding a way to talk about it. You know what I mean? And now that we're 12 issues in, we have stuff that keeps coming up, but yet there's some new surprises always. So, I think my love for this series, this Baxter run, it's still there. It's interesting reading it now rather than reading it when I was 12, 13, 14 and finding new things. And, no, I think every new series you have to have like a learning curve, and you got to go, oh, right. It takes a little bit to find out what the writer is doing, what the creative team is doing. And there's a lot of stuff that I just throw out there. I don't even know if it's real. It's just, some of the connections are just, wouldn't it be kind of cool to think about the comic this way, whether it's a writer's intention or not? I try to always go to the writer's intention, but some of that is just based on extrapolation. So I don't know if it's always right, but yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I was just going to say it is fun to speculate like that, but
yeah, and we bounce off well together with that. So I've been having a blast.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, for sure. This is once again, thank you for inviting me onto this special project. And 12 issues. We have how many issues did this go? 60 something?
63.
63 plus annuals and maybe some other specials, or plus we have some other things in mind to look at as well. Wow. I'll be retiring by the time we get to the end of this, Peter.
No, we'll do it. We'll get to it. All right. I guess that's enough navel gazing. Do we want to, let's thank our intro music, RhoMusic. You'll find links to that composer's YouTube and Twitter on our show notes. And our intro music, Lost City, is what it's called. And that's our intro and our outro music. And we definitely thank Rho for that. I hear we have some feedback.
We do. My podcast compatriot George of the Still defunct George and Tony Entertainment Show. He makes me say that every time. Hey, George. He sent me a question regarding episode 10, which was the issue Election Day. And so I'll read that and we'll comment on it. He says here, you guys mentioned the population had one day to decide between the presidential candidates. In today's climate, do you think the majority of American voters have made up their minds about their candidate in one day based solely on party, and no amount of campaigning or debating will change their minds? In other words, aren't we almost to the point where Levitz was eerily prophetic regarding our politics? Of course, that won't stop a 2-year campaign cycle, but it is food for thought, no? And I'll just to start off, George, I will say, reading this series, especially here in the later issues, has been eerily. Well, it's been eerie because we seem to be encountering certain serendipitous moments between this comic that was written 30 years ago and today's events, and it's just that, to me, that's just bizarre.
Yeah, to his point, I mean, yes. Sometimes I don't even think it takes one day or one. Sometimes I don't even think they need to even see the candidate or hear the candidate. You know?
Is it? Do they have a D by their name or an R? That seems like that's what it comes down to sometimes.
Yeah. And that's just the nature of humanity. I think we've learned a lot about the nature of humanity these past couple of years, and ultimately, I think that's something that Levitz is throwing at us too, in a very subtle, small way. But yeah,
considering this issue, I don't know how subtle it is. But we'll get into that. Yeah. So whether it's prophetic or not, I mean, he is just, it's probably more likely that we just have certain aspects of our society, certain issues that we can't seem to, I'll just say, change, for lack of a better word. And so we keep bumping up against them all the time throughout the years. So in other words, 1980, what was this, 85? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 1985 and 2018 probably aren't all that different in certain aspects, which is unfortunate.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks, George. I hope we answered that without stepping on too many landmines.
Yeah. That's
well,
pretty easy these days, too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we are here today to talk about issue number 12 of the Baxter run, and we will talk about that issue, and then we will do another Who's Who segment looking at Legion entries in Who's Who issue 5. And then, as Eric mentioned, we will talk about one little small subject at the end of the episode. But we aren't going to do any. Well, this issue has 2 stories in it, but they're sort of interrelated. But there are no other side books that we'll be talking about today. So we'll just jump into issue number 12.
All right. So issue 12, The More Things Change, is story number 1. And story number 2, The More Things Stay the Same. Like you couldn't predict that. Both of these were written by Paul Levitz. Artists on part 1, Steve Lytle and Mike Macklin, who is, I think, new to us in terms of this run.
Mm-hmm.
Ernie Colon returns as penciler for part 2 with Larry Malstad doing the inks there. And for the entire issue, John Costanza is the letterer, Carl Gafford colorist, and Karen Berger also the editor. With a lovely cover, I particularly like this one, by Lytle and Malstad. Synopsis, The More Things Change, the part 1 story. Once again, it's Apprehend a Pirate Day for the Legion, but they encounter a new wrinkle in the pursuit of pirates, a ship that disappears, even from Dawnstar. Meanwhile, Timberwolf and ever-present companion Block discuss Timberwolf's new attire, with Timberwolf suggesting that Block join in on the fun. Elsewhere, Legion Election Day has arrived, complete with such patriotic gestures as flag saluting and candidate kissing. What the heck, Dream Girl? Dawnstar threatens Brainy for mucking up her tracking ability, but he takes it in stride and announces that he's called the one Legionnaire who can deal with the situation. Phantom Girl. Through her, we are shown what Brainy has already deduced. The ship was able to, quote-unquote, disappear because a fellow... Oh, I've been practicing this word, Peter, for the last 2 days. Bidgetazillion? That person's ability was enhanced to shift the ship to... Ooh, watch the words there. Was enhanced to shift the ship to Phantom Girl's dimension. I'm all flubbed up now. Wildfire must now contemplate the impossible. Does he have to vote for Brainy for the election? Finally, the Legion founders let Element Lad know that they are removing themselves from active duty. Oh, noes! Part 2, the more things stay the same. Analysts for the United Planets Council discuss the resignations of the founders and how the election will have an impact. Even the Legion Academy members are caught up in the news about the founders' departure, with nearly everyone agreeing that Magnetic Kid is a shoo-in. But he doesn't take very kindly to the speculation. Some newscasters carry this thin plot thread forward, as does Vaughn, Gigi, and other science police officers, before the whole affair descends into a pillow fight. Never thought I'd say that. The issue ends with the founders and Element Lad discussing their new status, and Element Lad is congratulated, spoilers, for winning the election. What a cram-packed issue this was, Peter. So much going on, and I have so many thoughts about certain things. So what did you think about this issue overall?
So overall, we have two stories, as I said before, and as you talked about, that are relatively interconnected in one way or another. The second one could seem like it's like a tangent, but then it comes back to the election by the end anyway. I liked this issue, and I think I liked the second story more than the first. Mm-hmm. Not to say that the first one was bad or anything. I felt the first one, remember we talked about that issue where the Legionnaires fought the Sklarians? Is that who they were? The female space pirates?
Right.
And we were trying to figure out why. You know, why did Element Lad take a band of people to go fight? What was it about? What were we trying to see? I sort of felt the same here at first. Why were we seeing this adventure against these space pirates? What were we learning in the first story with Brainy leading that group, and then Element Lad with the founders? So, like, you know, there had to be something connecting there. And on the first read, I didn't get it, but I got it by the second read, and you know, we'll talk about it as we get in the issue. So I was struck by how relatively quiet the announcement of the election was. Like, if you weren't reading letter columns, there's been some hints in the dialogue, but all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is an election issue. The artwork is great on both chapters, and I liked how Levitz created a story that was clearly impulsed by the reactions of the readers to who they thought should be the leader. So all of these things, it's like a lot of these outside forces, and Levitz really trying to have to hone a story around a whole bunch of things. Plus it's issue 12. It does sort of feel like a year went by. I dug it. I like this issue. What about you?
Yeah, generally speaking, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I thought story number 2 was the more interesting, but I have some issues with it that I'll talk about. Mostly in basically the attempt to broadening the in-world effect that the Legion has. You know, outside, mm-hmm. In my notes I have outside the clubhouse. You know, mm-hmm. outside their adventures. Which that's a little bit of world building, and I always appreciate that. Story 1, I thought, it was pretty low key. I'm really interested now to hear your thoughts about the whole pirate thing, because like I said, we already had a story where they went up against some pirates, and here we have another story, and it seems to be a different set of pirates. I'm assuming maybe they're connected in some way, but they don't appear to be, to me at least, here in this issue. And then you get the announcement of the Legion founders. That's a really big deal, that the 3 founding members are going to be stepping away. Mm-hmm. And it happens in quote unquote anniversary issue for the Legion. And so what does that mean, and how will that impact the team as a whole? And so it seems like every issue, when we get together and talk about this, Peter, something about the particular issue that we're discussing leads me to think, well, what happens next? And that is exactly, that to me, that's good writing. That's good storytelling, comic book storytelling, because, it brings us back to buy, quote unquote, buy. I already bought them. It doesn't matter. But, but if you were, in 1985 reading these issue by issue, this is a great, compelling reason to come back to read issue 13.
It did feel that way. It very much felt like a passing of the torch. We talked about it in last issue too, with the spotlight on the Trinity, and we get their reactions again. We have a new leader. We're being teased with new members. Everybody's a Twitter, no pun intended, about what's going to happen. I think that's probably what I reacted to the most, was this feeling of, oh, next issue or next year or whatever, Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the outcome.
Yeah, I really got to tip my hat to Levitz, and I feel like I'd say that a lot, but he's so subtle in building this anticipation, along with his artists that are working with him, to build up the world, the characters. There's a lot of the letter writers make comments about how much personality some of the members of a Legion are finally starting to have, and I'm all about building up character and having good stories, and not just, superheroes punching things. And so he just does it so deftly. And he's just I think he's one of the more unsung writers of DC Comics and comics in general.
Yeah, when people talk about 80s creative teams, they talk about, Wolfman and Perez. They talk about Claremont and Byrne, or they talk about Walt Simonson on Thor, Frank Miller on Daredevil. But, you always got to throw in Levitz and Giffen, or just Levitz and all of his artists, because he was on this book for a long, long time and helped to define this book to the point where when Jeff Johns got his hands on it, he brought back this era. Mm-hmm. This was the era that he wanted to bring back. And then Paul Levitz got his hands back on it again. So it's interesting that Paul Levitz is so well known for this, because I don't know if I can think of other Paul Levitz books. I don't think what else did he write? But it does make me think, if he did write other stuff, I want to read it. I know he put out something just recently in the past 6 months through Dark Horse or Burger Books. But, this past year has been challenging and interesting in a series that kicked off with a 5-parter and has been single or double parts since then. Mm-hmm. And yet it's still been interesting.
And cohesive. Even though we're moving to another story, another plot point or whatever, it's still very cohesive. And he's juggling all these characters and still doing a really good job.
Yeah. This might be jumping to the end, but I did see on Twitter you mentioned you posted a thing about the election outcome. And since this is about a Legion election, and we got another and we're getting another election and another leader, or the same leader. As I said, this might be jumping to the end, but do you want to go right into that? It seemed like you had something to say about that.
Well, do you want to do the cover thing real fast before we jump into
yeah.
that?
You're right. I don't even know my own format. You're right.
Because I really like this cover.
The Baxter cover.
Yeah, the Baxter cover. It's got it reminds me of the last cover, which I think I described as being very descriptive of the story, because you have a space battle scene with the Legion and the pirates, right? But it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of action going on here. Superboy is featured prominently on the cover, which is weird because he really doesn't have a whole lot to do in this story. I hope we'll talk about that in a little bit, but and then at the very bottom of the cover, you've got all of the Legion icons across in 2 rows across the bottom there, signifying the whole Legion election. I think that's what they're going for, and it's just wonderful. It's a wonderful space scene drawn by Lytle and Malstead.
I agree. I picked my cover before I read the issue. I had read this issue before, but it took a while for me to go, oh, right, I did read this years ago. And I was trying to figure out what the Tales cover even was compared to the Baxter. They're so different in the subject matter, yet they're yet the Tales cover is right from page 1, right? Fighting that green monster, Wildfire fighting that monster, that's right on page 1. So it does make sense, but the Baxter cover is it really evokes what's going on inside. In fact, I feel like on pages, I guess it's 2 and 3, the bottom panels along page 2 and 3 kind of make up all the action that is going on the cover. So, there's a nice extrapolation going on there. Yeah, it's good. I think this one is pretty easy. The Tales one is fine. It's Steve Lytle as well. But I give it to the Baxter one.
Yeah. It's interesting that the Tales cover is in some way kind of opposite in composition. And by that I mean on the Baxter cover, Superboy is the prominent character on the cover. And then you've got Dawnstar, Sunboy, and Wildfire behind him. Brainy's more prominent than those 3 on the Baxter cover, but he's not even on the Tales cover here. But Wildfire is the one who is prominently featured. As you mentioned, he's battling this green alien, with Superboy being all the way in the back. So it's, kind of reverse there. I thought that was an interesting choice to make. And I have to wonder, maybe you brought this up, which made me think of this, but, is Wildfire a favorite of Lytle's? Is that why he's getting the premier treatment on the Tales cover?
I don't know that, but it could also be because Superboy, 1986, Superboy technically is not supposed to exist.
Yes, and I was wondering that myself as well.
Yeah, but it, he's still in that limbo stage. So, yeah, I don't know. Of all the comparisons between the 2 covers, this one I thought they were really different, and both good, but just different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you think, because on the Tales cover it says, plus Legion election results in, this is a year later.
Yeah.
I realized, people probably, as I started out doing, I went with the Tales book because it was cheaper, although I didn't stick with it very long. But I'm sure some people did, and so they had to wait another year to find out the election results that, to everyone else they already knew. It's already a year in, and I don't know how they didn't do Legion elections annually, right? They were just kind of sporadically done over the years.
Correct. The letter column said that Element Lad has been leader for 31 issues, I think. Well, that's between Baxter and Tales. So,
really, that's it?
Yeah. for his first term. Term. Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, I guess that's almost 3 years.
Yeah. The letter column said it was announced in 296 that he won, but it wasn't reflected until issue 306. It takes time for the writers to make it work, and that he ran for 31 issues between Tales and Baxter. And you figure whenever the people voted for this current one, it was probably months before, obviously months before the book was released, and a few months before they could even create it. So it takes time. Yeah, so I guess they can't really do the whole year thing, because especially at this point where people are mailing their entries in, it's not like they have the internet.
Well, the whole election. Do you want to jump to the election board thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I just found the whole concept. I knew about the Legion election well before this. I even participated in one of the last ones, maybe even the last one that they did online. And always wanted to do it earlier than that. Just I never got around to actually voting. But just the whole concept of this Legion election is just a fascinating one to me, in a lot of different ways. And I have a bunch of notes on this. I guess primarily because what we have 20. How many people voted in this? 20 something.
23.
23. Yes, exactly.
I don't know how Superboy gets a vote if he's not really around, but he does.
Right. So that's one of my notes. Is so it appears only active members get a vote, because Bouncing Boy is not on here. Mm-hmm. He's a reservist. Not to mention his wife. I don't remember how many reservists there are at this time beyond those two. But Superboy, he appears the previous issue, and he's running around with him. Hey guys, I'm back. So I guess he gets voting privileges. It was bizarre. That part's bizarre. The other thing I wanted to point out was, so there's no anonymous voting, which it's 1,000 years in the future, so maybe they don't have the hang-ups that we do. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting point, I guess, that they don't seem to have any hang-ups. And yet, so like you said, there were 23 people here involved, 2 of whom are running to be the leader. And so this is imagine being in a classroom, Peter, in one of your classrooms, and I don't know how many students you have, but thinking of a typical high school classroom, choosing a person out of that group to be the leader every so often, because basically we've had the same members, give or take a few, over a long period of time here, and just that aspect of these friends, these comrades, who, for whatever reason, the Legion Constitution, I guess, says thou shalt elect a leader periodically, and they just, I don't know. It's so, I guess what I'm bumping up against here is that my only experience with elections are the ones I participate in, and seeing how the candidates react to each other and attack each other, and transferring that onto this close-knit community of teenagers, technically speaking, I guess, and they are doing it so much better than we are in general.
And you would hope they would. I mean, they are from the future.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. This is even though it's bizarre to me, it's very much a blueprint for I wish how elections would go. Even though we talked about the presidential election last time, or last 2 times, or whatever it was, where the candidates have one day to basically make their pitch, and then people vote. I don't think the Legion did it this way because, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it, I mean, there were hints that the election was about to happen, but when did Brainiac 5 announce he was going to be running? Mm-hmm. Did I just miss that, or is that was just thrown in?
I think that's one of those where it was dictated by once they tallied the votes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they could do that early because they clearly picked the top 2 vote getters to be the candidates. So they probably assumed Element Lad would be one. You could build a story off of that because he was the previous one. But then you're like, I don't know who they're going to vote. Who are the readers going to vote for? Mm-hmm. So they had to wait. And that was the outcome, So I don't think they could, you could kind of play around with Dream Girl and some other people saying, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I just think the way they do it just didn't allow for that.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall when they announced reader? I almost said listener. Reader participation in the election. What issue that was?
I don't remember, no, and I'm sure we probably read it, or maybe it was in a Tales thing, or I would think it would be in the Baxter, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would hope they would have it in both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have gone back and looked to see it. It's just I'm curious, how long was it between that and the results?
Right.
Because as you said, people would write in, they'd write letters in it with their vote, and that takes time. So I would think that they would have it open for at least a few months to get enough votes in. I don't know. I would love to find out how this was, the mechanics of Paul Levitz and company, whoever had to tally all this stuff and take care of it. What that looked like, I guess. Mm-hmm. But I'm way out of bounds of the issue. Other thoughts about this? I thought it was interesting that Brainiac 5 and Element Lad voted for each other. How, as I said in my notes, how, that was very magnanimous of them. But I got to think, Brainiac 5 being the logical, brainy one, how logical was that for him to vote for his opponent? Or, because it is a not anonymous voting, I mean, that would just look bad, right? But would Brainiac care? See, I'm getting all wrapped up in what I think these characters might be thinking about. But this is, I don't know, I just had a lot of fun with this. And then, I realize, Dream Girl's premonitions aren't always accurate, but come on. She didn't foresee the winner? And then coming off of that, I noticed that Starboy voted for the other person that Dream Girl did. And then I was looking at, well, how did the other couples that we know of in the Legion, how did they vote? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them voted for different candidates between each other, which I don't, there's really no point to this. I just thought it was an interesting point. Just because you're going out with someone doesn't mean that necessarily that you have the same political outlook that they do, I guess, so, it's not a big deal. It's not all that interesting, but I thought it was.
Well, and from a storytelling point, Ultra Boy and Phantom Girl both voted for Element Lad, and they just had an adventure with him.
Yes. And that was one of my questions as well. And I was thinking about that particular mission and the Lost Legionnaires and all that stuff. And how did they did those teammates carry that allegiance through to Element Lad based on or opposite him based on his performance during that little adventure?
Uh-huh. Shrinking Valley was the only one who voted for Brainy from that adventure.
Yeah.
And then if you think about Dawnstar in Tales had that adventure with Brainy, and although they had a friendship by the end of it, a sort of close, whether it was out of stress or whatever. But then all of a sudden in this issue, they're pretty cold to each other, and she votes for Element Lad too. Whereas Wildfire votes for Brainiac maybe because of the adventure they were on, and he was so thrilled with how it turned out. He couldn't help but compliment Brainiac 5. So there's a couple in here that are, you could extrapolate back to previous issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. I found Wildfire's, because I did mention that in the synopsis. He announces that, does that mean I have to vote for you now? Considering that this one mission was successful based on Brainiac's deduction. And yet just a few pages earlier, when Dawnstar is accusing Brainiac of screwing up her powers, Wildfire's in the background, slapping his fist into his hand, in frustration. And we've seen in previous, I guess in the Tales issues, I'm pretty sure, when Brainiac was experimenting on her tracking abilities, there was some antagonism there too. So Wildfire to me comes across as a little, I don't know,
impulsive.
Yeah, well, I guess that plays to his character,
right?
I just thought it was odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. So I've been rambling on for a few minutes, Peter. What did you have any thoughts about that Legion election board and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, most of it we covered. Certain characters voting for certain character is interesting. The going back to what we said about what does Levitz have to do now that he gets this information that Element Lad is going to win and Brainiac 5 is going to be the runner-up. Well, that means Brainiac 5 is now the deputy leader. So he has to build stories on all that. So my takeaway really had to deal with that. Once I got to the end of the issue and the letter column, and I went back and read it again, and I thought, oh, okay. So Paul Levitz put Brainiac into an action-oriented storyline and put Element Lad in this sort of introspective character piece with the founders, which makes sense because he's the leader and they're the founders. And I thought, was that his way to kind of show their two leaderships? Like, this is what the Legion would be if Brainy won. He's a competent leader, but it would be very logical, very cold and whatever. And here's Element Lad, who Paul Levitz has the ability to write with much more characterization because it's the mid 80s and, he can just do different things than maybe they could do when leaders were leaders in the 60s or 70s, right? It's sort of, whenever I say things like that, I feel like it's when people say, who is your favorite Robin? And everybody always says Tim Drake. And it's like, yeah, that's because Tim Drake was written at a time when writers really wrote. Dick Grayson as Robin was in a bunch of comics for kids, so I sort of feel it's kind of like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like Paul Levitz gets to play with these characters in a way that pulls at the readers. So I like that. I like that counterpoint, Paul Levitz having to create this issue this way. And I like Element Lad as a leader. We talked about it before. He's very unsure. Someone in the letter column said he really hasn't been a leader because he's either been missing or the team is split up or whatever. So maybe this is Paul Levitz. Hopefully he might be going, obviously the readers reacted to him being leader. I get another crack at him being leader, and now I can really maybe put some story chops behind it And I think it would have been really interesting. I don't know if we would have gotten the stories we get after this if Brainiac 5 was the leader. You know, even that conversation with the Trinity when they're like, we're throwing our support behind you, Element Lad. And the reason is because we're resigning and we have all these things we want to talk about. And in my notes I wrote, well, yeah, what if he lost? What if Element Lad lost? Well, he wasn't going to lose because Paul Levitz knew he was going to win. So, of course the Trinity was going to talk to Element Lad about the future. If Brainiac 5 was going to win, I think he would have switched it, or maybe he would have wrote something different. So my larger takeaway was kind of like the construction of the story, in terms of the election. And then I think, the rest of the stuff, you know, I go back into story mode, but that my takeaway from this was, constructing a Legion leader issue must be difficult.
Yeah. But it does also bring up, this is something that I will want to pay attention to, I guess, going forward, is to see what Levitz and company does with Element Lad now that he's leader again. And then even, you know, down the road, I'm not sure when the next Legion election occurs, but how does that impact, as you were talking about, how does that impact the stories and the tone and whatever they're trying to construct? So that'll be an interesting point to, I guess, keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll add this in too. You
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the founders and their comments to Element Lad, knowing that, you know, he was going to be leader, you know, given the construction of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But I really did like the thoughts that Saturn Girl expressed about Element Lad right before we find out that he won. You know, she says, "I've been damn proud of what you've done as leader. You deserve the first two successive terms since my administration." Here's the. I forgot to write this down in my notes. She says, to start that off, she actually says, "Don't confuse intelligence with leadership, Jan."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, not much has changed.
It was nice to see, you know, for the Trinity not having a lot of spotlight in the first 10 or so issues. They definitely got them in the last 2 issues, 11 and 12. And it was fun to see them being all, you know, saluting the flag, you know, it's because the Legion is about rules. And I didn't realize there was a rule about that, you know, and they're dropping their votes and they're talking about their resignation and we finally have learned what it is that they will be doing. They're basically going to be kind of like elder statesmen, right? Which is a position that they should be in, given that they are the founders and the history behind the Legion. So the Trinity will now act as rotating permanent advisors. And it does make me wonder, what is Levitt's game plan? How would that be? They did talk about they could do more talent hunting. They could go out and find more Legion members, and that'll be something that'll come up. The one thing I really liked is Cosmic Boy saying to Jan, almost to like think bigger, you know, use the extra strength you can draw on, meaning the subs, meaning the academy. Almost like Paul Levitz reminding himself, don't forget that the Legion is not just the Legion, it's all these characters. And that's interesting. I thought that was cool. Sometimes the subs and the Wanderers and the Heroes of Lowler, they all are supporting characters, obviously, but when it comes time to be a leader, you got to draw on everybody. You can't just say, well, they're just subs, I'm not going to use them. Everybody's always complaining, oh my God, there's only 22 members. Well, really, there's more than that. There's more people who will come if you call. And I like that. I like that thing. That was on page 9 of the second issue. Second story. Yeah.
Well, I found that interesting too, because to key off what you just said, Levitz is now elevating the founders as they should be, but it's happened. It almost seems like he had this thought, like, oh, they really should be the elder statesmen, as you said, and he propped them up to be that, but then he's removing them from the board, from active duty, but in a sense. And so I thought that was how interesting would that have been if that whole aspect of them being the mentors, the trainers, the elder statesmen, and how that would affect the dynamic of the Legion. And I don't know if that would have been a good thing necessarily, because then you get this core group of people in the team, and they become, I don't know, they possibly become more isolated, more aloof, or whatever. And as opposed to being what they have been portrayed as, just another member who just so happened to have founded the whole clubhouse. Mm-hmm. But that dynamic is while he tosses it in these last couple issues, he's pulling the rug out from under us a little bit here in this one. But I am very interested to see what this whole rotating, what'd you call it? What they say that they're going to be rotating permanent advisor? Yeah. What that really means, and are we actually going to see that, or is this just kind of this is how we're going to write them off the page, so to speak? At least some of them.
And the whole thing could just be, it could all be just sales saying Paul Levitz is Paul Levitz, and he's like, hey, you know what? I want another Legion book. I'm going to write the Trinity out, and we're going to create Legionnaires 3, which they do in another year or so. So It could just be that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he's not so callous. I mean, it's not. We've read other comics where it's very blatant, where they're removing a character and you know why. This one has interesting things. They say earlier, it's time for the Legion to change, and they've been saying that. And new blood, new readers, new adventures. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did like if we keep with all the election stuff, page 7 of the first story, Dream Girl, she is savage. I loved what she did.
Really?
Yes, I did. I thought because I put in my notes, why isn't she running? Well, the obvious reason is because not enough people voted for her. But I just thought it was her character, she was just being almost as if saying, if I would have run, I would be leader. But she's savage. She owns who she is. And, even Siobhan is like, she wants to be mad, but she can't. She can't be mad at Element Lad. She could be mad at Dream Girl. And Element Lad's like, what just happened? And I just thought that scene was funny. Did you not like it?
No, I did. It's just, it was such an odd thing. So considering how Dream Girl kind of, I don't know, not fought. She didn't really fight with Element Lad, but no, I guess she would argue with Wildfire, Cosmic Boy one time. I don't know. During the meetings that she was running, she comes across as very capable, a very strong leader, and it seems obviously, as you said, it's because she didn't get enough votes, but in World, it totally does not make sense to me that she did not run, because she proved that she was able to lead the Legion while, Element Lad was off in another dimension. and she was doing I thought a pretty damn good job considering what was going on. So it's just odd to me, that she just brushes it off, again, because she didn't get the votes, but she brushes it off by saying campaigning so hard. She's such an odd character, and I wish that we would get some more stories about focused on her, because she comes across as this, depending on the writer's mood, I guess, perhaps over the years, kind of ditzy sometimes, but then she's not, like it's an act, which I think it is. But then, as you say, she's very savage. She owns the room regardless of who's there. The founders are walking through, and she doesn't care. The Legion leader is walking through with his girlfriend, and she just smacks one right on his face. and then just like, I'm out. Bye.
And she is. She really is out. She just becomes a regular member now.
Mm-hmm.
So she could be on a high. What a great scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know we're jumping around a lot, but that's sort of how I felt with this issue. So if we go to the reaction in the second story, and we can go back to the first story, later, but the reaction. So as you mentioned in the synopsis, we get this really open world story. We get reaction from analysts from the United Planets Council. We get reaction from just gossip and news. Well, there's two different things. We get reaction from like news channels. We get gossip channels or gossip that we learn about. We get reactions from the Legion Academy. We get reaction from the science police. At first I was like, what an interesting way to push the suspense, right? It's not even through the Legion. Like, Levitz has written enough about them, he's like, no, I'm going to write the reactions and show the status that the Legion has now. And that's the thing I love the most. And that's the thing. We talked a little bit about it in previous issues, the way that Sunboy has his swagger and he can be a jerk to the science police, or just the way government treats the Legion. They have a status. They're a little spoiled. They're a little privileged. People want to be them. People want to sleep with them. People want to know what they're the Kardashians of the 30th century,
Oh my God, you just ruined the Legion for me, Peter.
Oh no. I'll pick something a little more benevolent, but you know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to be them. They want to know about them, their celebrity status, their social status. What's the one comment the one news guy says? Well, they're extra help, when it comes to defense. Are they really extra help, or are they the main help to the United Planets? And maybe some people might have issues with that, including the president.
Right.
Even though, so that's why I loved that story, because it interrupted the Legion part of it, yet it was still about them. We still didn't know what the outcome was, and then we find out at the end. I dug the structure of that.
Yes. What did you think, though, of the humor in this second story? It's almost like it was written by somebody else.
Most of the backup tales seem to always be humorous. Not all.
That's true, yeah.
Most.
Yeah. But at least with the last issue with Bouncing Boy and Comic Queen, that was Keith Giffen. A lot of that was Keith Giffen. But this is written by Levitz with Ernie Colon on the art. And I don't know, it was just, the humor was just so over the top, especially when you compare it to even humorous moments, mostly involving Graham, in the first story. And it was just an odd tonal shift that I just like, what, and it kept accelerating, or we get the analysts, and you get, I don't know, it's almost farcical, and then you get the reaction of Magnetic Kid to what the Legion Academy members are talking about, and he just explodes with powers, shoving everybody away, and which very immature dude, but okay. And then the newscasters, and then like I said in the synopsis, the science police officers are even contemplating what's going on, and it descends into an actual pillow fight. I mean, come on. I realize that, it doesn't, the comic doesn't always have to be serious, and the Legion has never really been that serious overall. But boy, this descent into farce was just a little too much for me. I don't know. What do you think?
I could see that. Could it be Ernie Cologne's wishes? Maybe he wanted something because that could easily have been a backup tale that was just a lot of people talking. Mm-hmm. And he was like, give me a little bit more, make the analysts fight, and they're kind of, they're wild. They're aliens. They wouldn't all act like humans, right? They would have larger than life personalities, probably. Mm-hmm. Some would be cold and calculated. Others would be big and bumbling. The Academy thing, is a way to get an action scene without actually having.
Okay. Yeah.
I could see that. See that. And the same thing with the science police. Like, again, you could just have them sitting around a table, but then it would turn into a Bendis book, and they would just be boring, whatever. But okay. So he's like, let's throw a Pac-Man game in there. Let's throw a pillow fight.
Oh God, Pac-Man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I do get it. I think it does speak to Ernie Cologne. He's no stranger to humor books. He did Richie Rich and Casper and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know. I guess it didn't even strike me as odd, because we just read that Comic Queen issue, maybe because there's been some other wacky things that have happened that I sort of go, yeah, like I think back all the way in issue 1 when Dreamgirl and Starboy are on that casino planet, and she's like flicking little chips that look like they have legs into the machine to bet, and she's just like flicking them, and they're running in. Like, that's silly, but that's the future. So I get it. So yeah, it didn't offend my senses, I guess.
Well, I wonder, since you're talking about what Cologne brought to this, it almost seemed like it made me think that perhaps this was done Marvel style, where Cologne had the plot, and so he drew a bunch of stuff, and Levitz had to go in and add the dialogue later to make it match. Just because this does not, I don't know, it doesn't seem like a Levitz story in a lot of ways to me.
Now, the way that I think it does speak to Levitz is when they got to the page where they were talking about, some of the new members might come from Lalor or the Wanderers. Mm-hmm. I almost felt like it was Levitz putting a spotlight on the rumors that probably happened for real with readers in letter columns or in trade magazines at the time. If they got the hint that there was going to be new members, were they like, I bet you so-and-so from the Wanderer and Duplicate Boy is going to become a member. And this is Paul Levitz sort of taking all that and go, you know what, we can make a story out of this. Especially because he wraps it up with Flint Brage.
Yes.
Yeah, who is the Legion's biggest fan, it says here. And it's meant to be fun and silly, and apparently Flint Brage was based on real-life Legion fans. It was based on Mike Flynn and Harry Broerges, and they were the creators of the Legion Outpost fanzine. So this is a character that is meant to represent Legion fandom. And the way it ended with Element Lad going, I'm going to go out and give him the good news, I felt like that whole last page suddenly became like a thank you to the readers.
Yes, I did too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way that you said, like it's like you said, the whole second part of this book kind of spiraled and tensions were high. And if you kind of maybe put it towards, look how much focus is on the Legion when they're not fighting, they're still treated like celebrities. And this is not only is it an election, but everybody's like, oh, what's happening with the membership? Apparently something's happening with the Trinity. Like, I don't know. I think the tone worked for that, even though people were flailing and flying and feathers were flying. It was a little ridiculous, but I don't know. I dug it.
Now, while I kind of bashed the writing a little bit, or at least the hyper humor or whatever, I do appreciate what Cologne is doing on the page here. That this opening panel of the analyst team, all these different aliens from the United Planets gathered around to discuss the Legion, and you have a bunch of different looking characters, like I said, aliens. But then he also has these screens showing their faces, so you get more close-ups. And I was looking at him, and I'll be damned, the guy made everything match up from what we're seeing, So if someone's turned off to the side looking at someone at the head of the table, the image is showing that, So it's like, I appreciate the artistry here, but then I also dive into, well, why the hell do they need these screens? Because they're looking at screens in front of them on the table, and then there are screens of themselves, and it's not like they're at like at Bruce Wayne's dinner table where they can barely see each other. It's a pretty small table considering that there are 8, 10, 12 people around here, or I say people, aliens, whatever. It's just odd little things like that. But I dig it because Cologne's playing on the page, and then you get the science police scene, and you mentioned Pac-Man earlier, and there's okay. First of all, Pac-Man 1,000 years later, really? But on page 7, we have all these panels, and they're all just kind of floating. There's TV screens, and there's panels, different shapes, and then on page 7, you got a question mark. A bunch of panels that form the shape of a question mark, which goes, plays directly into, the mystery of who's the new leader, right? I dug what he's doing there. I mean, it's not all that, it's not subtle at all, but it's really interesting that he's playing around with this stuff. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of Todd McFarlane when he was on Infinity Inc. early on, where he would just put things on the page that had nothing to do with the story. And there was, I want to say that there was some things in the first part of the story, but I don't think so now. What? Oh, dang it! There's something else in here that on page 9, we get this one little panel showing all of the Legion icon just kind of floating there, and really has nothing to do with. I mean, it's not even really them voting because we see screens that show that on the next page and the page following. It's just kind of thrown in there. And I don't know. It doesn't really advance anything in terms of what's on the page here, in terms of what they're talking about. But
that one does.
Okay.
That goes to what I was saying, because Cosmic Boy then says later, he says right underneath it, he says, don't take the responsibility of being leader too heavily. Think about all the reservists and subs, the extra strength you can draw on.
Okay, yes, and I'm seeing, I see the other, Night Girl and Fire Lad and all that kind of stuff. You're right. But it's an odd, I mean, you're right, it does have a connection, but it's it's not. I keep saying this phrase, in world. It's not part of this scene, but it relates to it.
Right.
And I like that playfulness.
Another artist might have blown up the panel with Cosmic Boy, and then behind him in images might have put all the other characters.
Perhaps.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's loose. It's much looser than the Steve Lytle stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the character, like when you go to the Academy chapter and you see the slow breakdown with Magnetic Kid, as all the other ones are basically hounding him, right? Because they know that if Cosmic Boy leaves, that probably opens up a slot for him because there's no duplicate powers. He's the younger brother. He probably is a shoo-in. So, he doesn't want to think about that. And it erupts literally, figuratively and literally. I just realized at the end there, Bouncy Boy says, enough kidding around, back to the Academy. There's some people I'd like you to meet. But we don't actually meet anybody. So that must be saved for next issue or a future issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about halfway through. I think it was, what page was it? Oh, the one before the question mark page. Just something about it. I was like, God, this is good. He's using the screens to break up the panels. He's good.
Mm-hmm. Well, and doesn't it also remind you, because this is a Perez conceit with video screens in scenes. I don't know. I'm sure that George Perez wasn't the only one playing around with that, but I really associate him with that, given how much he used it in the Titans.
Perez, Chaikin, Miller, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple quick thoughts on a bunch of stuff if you want me to rattle that off now. Yeah, here's a whole bunch of stuff that probably means nothing. Page 3 of the first story. The people that Dawnstar is fighting on the lower right, or no, in upper mid right, the one she's punching has to be Duck Dodgers, and the one that's flying away looks like it's Marvin the Martian because he's got that little thing on top of his head. Okay,
so I'm glad you brought this up because when I was reading through this, I'm looking at these characters. That's the first one that with the one that she's punching, and it's a duck character. I didn't think about Duck Dodgers. I was thinking, is this some sort of because this is DC and Warner Brothers. I mean, it doesn't look like Daffy Duck, but then I'm like, well, is this some sort of homage to Howard the Duck? And so I was trying to think of all these duck characters. I did not notice the other character as much, but that makes sense. And then there is another character in here that they show a couple times, and he's got this. I'm trying to find the page. If you go to page 8, the bottom middle panel was Superboy, and there's this guy, and he's also on the middle panel of the page too. But I think that he shows up like 3 different times in this story, and he looks eerily familiar to me. And I was going to ask you if you felt the same.
Well, apparently these space pirates have been seen before in a Superboy and Legion issue, but I never read it.
Oh, okay.
But no. It doesn't look familiar to me.
Maybe it's because of his outfit and what looks like a mask. It made me think of is this some sort of Green Lantern type homage, or this is a renegade? Of course, Green Lanterns are banned on Earth. Well, or I don't know. Is that? Am I jumping the shark here on that one? Is that or jumping the timeline?
No, I think that's right.
Okay. Anyway, I thought it odd that he kept reappearing, and it made it conspicuous enough that I had to wonder, is this a thing? Is this character a thing? Have we seen him before?
Maybe in that Superboy issue, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
A couple other things. Superboy, page 2, he says, the 20th century simply isn't this challenging. And I just wrote, be careful what you wish for, Superboy.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Yeah. Page 5, we get Timberwolf's new look.
Yes.
And we talked last issue about Block in the Who's Who, where he had a new costume. And here we see that that's actually going to, I guess, pan out in another issue.
Mm-hmm. That
was cool.
What do you think of Timberwolf's new costume? I mean, it's not all that different from his other one.
Yeah, it's just a little sleeker, I think. Mm-hmm. It's not so traditional. It's the one I kind of remember him the most having. So it didn't feel, it felt almost like I was like, oh, right. Yeah, that's the one I know.
Hmm. I just saw that as, okay, Lytle's starting to play around with, as Giffen did, starting to play around with her look. And so, yeah, let's bring that on. Let's see more of this.
Yeah. I mean, if he's been the artist now for how many issues? And you mentioned that he had probably done some design sketches. Like, why wouldn't you want to put your mark on these characters?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When Brainiac 5 said that he was going to invite another Legionnaire member in to help with the mission because he had figured it out, I thought he was going to bring in Invisible Kid 2 because of the whole teleportation thing or whatever. I thought, oh, this would be a great way for Levitz to explain what the heck is going on with Invisible Kid. But then they brought in Phantom Girl, which I love. But it did make me go, we've seen a lot of Phantom Girl. Like, why would, okay, I guess. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it was nice, we get a little explanation about the powers of Phantom Girl's people. I guess I didn't really think of it in those terms, that when they are intangible, they're basically going back to their dimension, which I guess that makes sense. Maybe I did know that. And the captain, I like that the captain of the renegade ship, of the pirate ship, who is a same alien member as Phantom Girl, he has a white uniform and he has that jet black hair. He almost looks kind of like Phantom Girl, design sense. So I thought that was nice.
Yeah. Since we're on this scene, I'm bumping on these story elements. So, Phantom Girl goes in, gets seen by the members of the ship, and they start firing on her, and one of them says, "Was that a ghost? Like, does he not know his own captain and what he can do?" And let alone, there's an intruder in their ship and they don't sound some sort of alarm before she's able. I mean, it was really quick on the page how she reaches the captain on the bridge, but it's just like, are pirates that stupid?
There is another mention of the Crime Watcher program during the Science Police section of the second story, the Crime Watcher program, which they talked about in last issue with Zendak, about it's a program where they don't need the Science Police. It's just crimes get stopped. However, I just thought that was curious. I have a running list of subplots and just to see if they'll come about, and so it was kind of nice to see that again. I don't know if that'll be anything that'll be big, but boy, that's kind of scary. A whole program that can stop crime without any humans or humanoids around.
Mm-hmm.
It's freaky.
And of course, Levitz doing Levitz by keeping that plot line going with just, a couple little panels with that science police officer.
Right. There are a couple shots of the headquarters that I really liked in the first story. It was interesting seeing Laurel Kent in a brace and using a crutch. That was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously still hurting from being shot, but being Kryptonian, I just thought that was interesting that, maybe she's Kryptonian, but many generations removed. So it might take her longer to heal.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty much it, but for me.
Which again, Magnetic Kid's reaction where he tosses everybody out. She's injured. What what the hell, dude? I have a couple more things.
Yep.
So on page 2 of the second story, we have this character, I think, whose name is Sorek. He's the blonde guy wearing the gloves, and he's cracking his knuckles. But it's his look. Again, I swear to God, I've seen this character or someone who looks like this character before. And so I wondered if is Cologne homaging something? Because the guy, he's just, I don't know. These analysts, these are not the, like the number crunching stereotype that you think of when you hear the word analyst. They are a very eclectic group of representatives of the United Planets here, and it's just weird. Everybody's just weird. You got the big gray guy with his little pink skinned blonde haired companion. I don't know, just everything. And the leader of the group, calling order, but then presses this button and shocks everybody to quiet. Really? that we're 2 pages into this second part of the story, and that's where I'm like, oh my, what the hell am I reading here? And then it just continues from there.
Look at our administration now. Does it really surprise you? This is tame compared to the nitpicks that come in and out of that crazy administration.
I think maybe that's it. Did I mention if I haven't, I'll repeat myself. I really liked the despite the the silliness of the pillow fight. I really liked the camaraderie of the science police officers in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really neat. We get to see them interacting, being silly, being friendly to each other, commiserating, not letting the others take themselves too seriously. And this is what friends do. And I really dug that. I thought that was a dimension that we haven't seen in the science police, especially, and 2, maybe not even just generally in this book. I mentioned at the top of the discussion, how the Legionnaires are this close-knit group of people, but we're not always shown these kinds of moments with them, because they're too often trying to address the adventure or bad guy de jour, right? So, when we get something like this, it's like, oh yeah, that's really cool. One more thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned Flint Broge before, and I remember seeing him before, but I had to go look it up. But I just want to mention for people who are maybe interested that he first appeared in Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes number 209, and then again in Legion of Superheroes 311. And in both of those cases that he showed up, something bad happened to the Legion or with Legionnaires. And so I'm wondering, what's coming next since he's made an appearance. and I also liked, I don't know if this is Cologne doing Levitz or was this Levitz a panel that Levitz drew that they threw into this issue, because that looks to me like Levitz with Flint on the video screen there. I don't know. What do you think? Am I off my rocker there?
I think at this time Levitz had a mustache.
Did I say Levitz?
You said, yeah.
No, sorry. I meant to say this is. I don't remember what I said now. Giffen drawing this as opposed to Cologne, the Flint's face. Doesn't that look like Giffen drew that?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Sorry.
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I just, if so, I thought that was kind of neat, that they just, toss that in this issue. I don't know why Giffen would do that, but, since he appeared in 311, I'm assuming that Giffen drew that one. I don't remember offhand.
Cohen is good at he's really good at having different anatomy and different character breakdowns and things. So I wouldn't put it past him if he, maybe is feeling he's doing his own Giffen kind of thing on it.
That's what I was wondering too.
Yeah.
I will say before we move on from this issue, I looked at the future letter column to see what the reaction was to this. And many-time letter writer Rex Joyner called the lead story the best in some time, and the second story bordered on the incoherent.
He's an aggravator, that Rex Joyner.
He is.
He's, short of calling him a troll.
He was I wouldn't go that far just yet based on what I'm reading, but he definitely has an opinion about, or had opinions about these things. Very strong opinions.
I think he relished that presentation of himself.
Yeah.
Because he went in on Ernie Cologne a little bit, and I was like, okay, I don't know about you.
Well, and so last issue I talked up Cologne's work, and I was I said something along the lines of I'd like to see what he would do with the Legion beyond this one issue, and so then the next issue we get him back, but I felt the art was different. And I'm not sure if it was because of Cologne or because he was inked by somebody different.
I think it probably was both.
Yeah, maybe he was playing around a little bit more.
Yeah, because, there's no shortage. He did not shortchange himself. The panel layouts and so much,
In fact, I think he did even better in terms of the page layout.
I like the letter column from issue 12 where Paul Levitt said, someone asked about the history of the United Planets, and Paul Levitt said, we did talk about a graphic novel or a miniseries not featuring the Legion on the history of the United Planets, but that obviously was just talk because that never panned out. But boy, that would have been great.
Do you think maybe though, because wasn't there a miniseries called Legion Worlds or something like that, many years later?
Many years later, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe they put some of that information into like source books at the time, which would have been cool.
Well, speaking of source books, shall we move
on? Good segue. Sure.
Who's who?
Who's who? What's what? When is when?
I have been. This is my new favorite segment of our show, Peter, because I get to pull out these old Who's Who issues that, in some cases, I haven't looked at these issues since I first bought them in 1985.
Wow.
So, yeah, this has been awesome.
Who's Who number 5. We have 7 entries. Legion related, Color Kid, Colossal Boy, Composite Superman, Computo, Controllers, Cosmic Boy, and Cosmic King.
Yeah, say that 5 times fast now.
Yeah. I want to start on the cover real quick, if you don't mind. These are my notes on the cover. Colossal Boy and Cosmic Boy get nice, prominent images. Cosmic King is also on the front cover. Composite Superman, I like the way that Perez and company did that because he's splitting the spine right down his own split. That was cool. But so is Computo. Computo is also split. A controller is on the front cover, and Color Kid is in the hand of Colossal Boy with Crazy Quilt, one of Batman's villains, which totally makes sense because they're both color characters. So I thought that was nice.
Yeah. Perez is really good at compositions like this.
Oh my God, he's the best.
He puts so much thought into why he's placing these characters as he does.
Yeah.
Or at least I assume so, based on the evidence in front of me.
He does.
Even though, like Cyborg's right there too. He's just kind of floating, but it's because the cosmic boy, I'm not sure why. It almost looks like Cosmic King is also involved, but that's not right.
Right.
But yeah, so Cosmic Boy is making him float up there. So yeah, just wonderful.
All right, let's go to Color Kid.
Color Kid. Peter, one of my favorite substitute Legionnaires.
Oh, good.
Probably my third favorite after Night Girl and Polar. Is it Kid? Polar Kid? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Polar Boy.
Polar Boy. Yeah, jeez. Boy, kid, lad, whatever.
I know.
And, it's just, Color Kid is one of the, I mean, he's like right above Stone Boy in terms of how stupid his powers are. Maybe even worse than Stone Boy, because at least Stone Boy can, perform some sort of function depending on the story. But I don't know. I dig the fact that his abilities is to change the color of things. I don't know why. And I think they have they've missed an opportunity here, and maybe that's something that they address in future issues. But he got his powers because he was bathed in multi-dimensional light. There's got to be a story in there, this dimensional quality of this light changing ability.
Well, especially if you think about the rainbow lanterns later.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Oh my God. Yes, exactly.
I can't imagine that they didn't do that in Johns' run. But I haven't read it in a while, so I don't know if he touched on Color Kid having power over the emotional spectrum, but that would make sense. I didn't really take anything too much away from this entry, other than it was, kind of cool to see Keith Giffen draw it, and he had inker Bob Oxner, who inked a lot of Giffen's ambush bug stories.
Okay, thank you. Because I was looking at this figure and thinking, boy, that looks oddly familiar to me, but I couldn't place why. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
I think it's because Giffen is really testing new stuff all the time, and Oxner was a good inker for that, so that made sense to use him there. But the entry is, it's a little light for a character that's not all that important, but I looked up a little bit more about Color Kid and come to realize he was suggested by a reader in early adventure issues before he even showed up. So that was kind of interesting to find out. As many Legionnaires were, or side characters. They would just throw out random names, and they would be like, suddenly they would become a sub or a Legionnaire. So it'll be interesting to see, like we talked about with Chlorophyll Kid last episode, like Color Kid, seeing him here and then knowing that we'll be doing the sub special soon. So we'll get a little bit more of those characters. Colossal Boy, what do you have for him?
We talked before about how Who's Who was this opportunity to showcase new looks for the characters. And yet we get an old look for this character, drawn by Steve Lytle. So I was just curious because I don't know what Lytle, what we're in store from Lytle in terms of Colossal Boy's costume, since we just got done talking about Timberwolves and blocks. So maybe this is, because this is a costume that he hasn't been in for a while, at least when Giffen was drawing it, because Giffen would draw him in the more simplistic blue and red getup, or simpler, not simplest.
Right, the one that Perez he draws Colossal Boy on the cover with the one that he's currently using in the Baxter run. Yeah, that one that you're talking about. Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Maybe it's going to make a comeback.
Yeah, and why not? That's the thing. That's the one aspect about superhero comics where I was like, I wish I would see a little bit more of this. I mean, why wouldn't you tweak? Why and go back and change things up? Other than, of course, it's intellectual property, and you can't really do that sometimes.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I didn't really learn anything different about his entry. I was just really struck by the Steve Lytle art.
Yeah. Yeah, incorporating all these different eras of Colossal Boy, and you got Mom and Dad, you've got Yura in there, so I thought that was kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
I did wonder, though, as I was reading this, because he got his powers because of that meteorite. Was it a Mars or Venus, or I don't remember which one. Yeah, Martian. A meteor crashed into the Martian soil near him. And so I again, like Color Kid, I wondered, well, what's the story of the meteorite? What happened to that thing? Why didn't more people get size changing abilities? I'm sure that's not the only meteorite that can do that. I don't know. I start thinking about all these possibilities that really don't need to go anywhere.
Composite Superman, the one-man Legion, it was created back in 1964 in a story where he gets the powers of the Legion because a lightning bolt zaps these little statues. So that's the Legion connection there.
It's kind of a Flash style origin too in that way.
Yeah. Nothing's a coincidence in the DC universe. Meteors, lightning bolts,
This was always one of my favorite villains of the World's Finest team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember reading in some reprint issue of something that first story where he appeared, and I always dug his look. That he hated Superman so much. And by extension Batman, because they were a team. But he hated Superman so much that he would take on Superman's appearance, though green-skinned. Well, I'm not sure why he would choose Brainiac 5 as his skin tone, other than to show, oh yeah, this is a Legion character, even though he's dressed up half as Superman and half as Batman. I mean, he did have the powers of the Legionnaires, but it's just, why... It was just odd. It's just an odd character. It's just crazy bonzo oddness of the DC Silver Age.
Did he ever even fight the Legion? I don't think so.
Yeah, it says.
Did
It says here. Another version of the composite Superman. He became Amalgamax. And with the aid of the Legion of Superheroes, Superman and Batman defeated him. So that's in the last paragraph of the entry.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
I mean, I'm only familiar with Joseph Meach, the original one. So I don't. When I read that was news to me.
All right. What about Computo?
When I first looked at this, I was struck by how prominent Danielle. How do you say Invisible Kid's last name? Fokar?
Fokar, that's yeah.
How prominently she's displayed, but I'm looking at it from 30 some years later, thinking back on that time. But really, it was only a few years, 3 years. I think I deduced it was 3 years previous to this that she first appeared. Previous to the Who's Who entry is what I mean. And so you see the original Computo in that very, very retro robot looking style, and then you have the intermediate version of Computo in the form of Danielle, and then the neutered version in the Sphere as the Legionnaire's Major Domo. So I liked that progression on the page that they did. And that's Keith Giffen drawing that too.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew he could draw a cute killer robot?
My takeaway was I looked up that the Daleks have been around since 1963.
There you go.
And Computo has been around since 1966. Would Americans have even known about Doctor Who?
That soon after?
Yeah.
That seems highly unlikely.
He looks like a Dalek.
He does, yeah.
Or maybe it's just coincidence. But then seeing this, so Computo, the killer robot, has 3 horizontal lines on his forehead, but the Major Domo has 3 vertical lines on his forehead. Oh. And I don't know if is that just a happy accident, or is that Keith Giffen really knowing his stuff?
It's got to be.
Right?
I don't think he does things like this by accident. But wait a minute, does Computo have those 3 lines in other appearances in the comic, or is this just something that was done for this entry?
That's what I would have to look up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if it's in the comics that way, that's amazing.
I grabbed the issue 12 to see if Computo's in it, but I don't think he is.
No, he's not.
He was in the last issue. So I have to go back and look.
Yeah. The controllers. Love the art on this one.
Who is that? Jerry Bingham.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with that name. But the art here looks familiar, so I'm not sure why that is.
What I took away from this one is they threw into the origin story the notion that the controllers were more or less an offshoot of the Guardians. They were both from the same race. And that was something that I thought first came up in Crisis number 7. And here, this Who's Who number 5 came out, at least 2-3 months before Crisis 7. So they knew that they were going to retcon those 2 alien races into one, but they didn't go into full detail here in Who's Who that they were actually both members of the Malthusian race, and then they split off and the Owens became the Owens and the controllers became the controllers. But they certainly touch on it here, which, the Crisis kid in me was like, oh, wait, I thought that was first read in Crisis, but here it is right here in Who's Who, 2-3 months before Crisis. So,
so we got a little sneak peek.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me.
And I guess I kind of objected. You just mentioned the Malthusian race, that's what I remember as well, that the Owens came from Malta.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no mention of that here. It says that an advanced race with vast powers had evolved on the planet Oa, and I don't think that's correct, is it?
No, that gets changed. So that's why, you can sort of see that not all the information is correct, even though it is heading to that reboot or heading to that retcon. It's not all correct. They would start on a different planet and then they would go to Oa.
It also states that different controllers would use different weapons. We only saw one, the Sun Eater. Yeah, it says other equally powerful but vastly different weapons are believed to exist, and which made me think of a few issues back when we had the controller show up with again a Sun Eater, and so I remember thinking when I read that issue, why does it have to be a Sun Eater every time? And then I read this. I'm like, oh yeah. So they, somebody thought of that they would play around with whatever destructive capabilities these controllers had. But I don't know that we ever got that. Did we?
I guess you can count the Miracle Machine, but not until the Dark Stars series. I can't really think of any other ones. Yeah. By the way, Jerry Bingham used to do some covers on the Suicide Squad series in the 80s.
Okay.
And maybe some interiors, too.
That may be what I'm thinking of then.
I mean, he's done a lot more, but that's just something quick. Cosmic Boy?
Yes, my boy.
What do you think?
I love Cosmic Boy. It's one of my favorite Legionnaires. Speaking of artists, though, Richard Howell, again, a name I'm not familiar with.
Looks awfully like Terry Shoemaker, though.
That's what I was thinking.
And I even tried to look it up online to see if it was maybe a misprint or something.
Ah, okay.
I guess maybe it's the Carl Kessel inking that is making it feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really learn anything new. What I took away from this one, though, is his marital status. It's not single. It says unmarried. Almost as if to say, get off your high horse and marry her, Cosmic.
It's like the Facebook equivalent of It's Complicated?
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
The only thing I was going to mention about this, it has nothing to do with the entry itself, really, but just kind of a comment about Cosmic Boy. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the founders and the importance of them. In the entry, it talks about how Rock was there in the Legion's early years, regarding how many members came in under his leadership, because he was the first Legion leader, chosen by a computer, I think, right? If I remember correctly.
Mm.
Also, the Legion Constitution was written under his watch. So I guess I'm surprised he wasn't, I don't know, more prominently featured in the stories than I remember. But again, this is 30 years ago, so maybe I'm not remembering as much as is actually there on the page. But
right.
It's also flavored by the fact that, like I said, he's one of my favorite Legionnaires. So I always want my favorites to be more prominently figured.
He has a good entry, though. That's a nice size entry.
Mm-hmm.
Good art.
It's interesting, though, they don't show, how we see a lot of different, well, with Cosmic Boy, we saw 3 different outfits. Here, we only see 2, one of his earlier ones, but we totally miss out on the girdle version of his outfit, which I still kind of like.
And then finally, Cosmic King.
So, Peter, correct me, or remind me, I should say. Was it Cosmic King that you talked about in the first arc, and how he figures into the timeline of the Legion? Right. Okay.
Made evidence here by them saying his first appearance was Legion of Superheroes number 2, which they're evoking the Baxter run.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. So they're totally bypassing the adult Legion Superman stories, and they're saying that the first time we've seen this version of Cosmic King was in the Baxter run, because prior to that he was from the future. He was from the Legion's future.
Right.
But yet in that storyline, as we talked about, the Legionnaires knew him, but he didn't know the Legionnaires. And he was like, oh, I guess my reputation precedes me. And they're all thinking, no, we fought you before. But no, they didn't. They just caught up to his origin story, basically. So that's interesting. And maybe that's Paul Levitt's way of going, I'm going to simplify this guy. That's just way too crazy. Like, how could Lightning Lord be from the future of the Legion when he is Lightning Lad's brother?
Mm-hmm.
It's just not possible. So in a way, Levitz is like doing his own little retcon before the crisis even happened.
I really like the Tom Mandrake art on this. Didn't Tom Mandrake also do Suicide Squad? Am I misremembering that?
He did some Spectre stuff and some...
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes. I don't know why I went Suicide Squad. Yes, Spectre.
Yeah, around this time. Anyway.
Yeah. And isn't it, I know, timey-wimey, retconny, whatever, Cosmic King, so Cosmic, so he's the Dark Mirror duplicate of Cosmic Boy, right, in the Legion in the earlier stories. And so he has to take on Cosmic as part of his name. And his costume is similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then when you factor in what you just described, how Levitz has retooled his place in Legion history, it seems even more odd that he would take on that name and that costume.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And what a weird, blue, violet, black. It's villains have weird fashion sense.
I was always fascinated by him, though. I don't know if you ever read Jeff Loeb's Superman Batman run. There's a story arc that Carlos Pacheco draws, and it features Lightning Lord, Saturn Queen, and Cosmic King as if they raised Superman, I think. I think that's the way it is.
Yep. So and Batman.
Right. So it's like a riff on their first appearance. But that I like that. I like that concept a lot.
Oh, that makes me want to dig that out and see if what Levitz put into place was ignored or played with or whatever.
Yeah, I think they went back to the original story.
Yeah, I think they did too.
So that's it. Those are the 7 from Who's Who number 5.
7. Wow, that's a lot.
So we'll keep doing that as we move on to issue 13. We'll take a look at whoever showed up in Who's Who number 6. By the way, if we want to touch on the Crisis real quick, Crisis number 4 came out the same time as Legion Baxter Run number 12. Had the first appearance of Lady Quark, who will show up in the acronym Legion series. So she has a Legion connection there. And I thought it was interesting that they use Brainiac 5 a lot in the Crisis, as not as the leader, but as kind of the point person to try to figure out what is going on with the Crisis, which makes sense because he's super smart. But we just talked about Element Lad versus Brainiac 5 in a leadership thing, and here in Crisis, which takes place a few months later, Brainiac 5 gets a lot of the spotlight in Crisis, so it's kind of interesting.
Should we talk about the next thing we're going to do?
Yeah, so we've been hinting at it for a while. We mentioned it in this episode. We are going to be doing an episode on the Legion of Substitute Heroes special, which came out in around this time too, in April. Probably, close to April Fools, I would think.
That explains a lot.
It's even referenced.
People could probably guess where I'm going, or how I feel about that issue.
Did you read it yet recently?
No.
Okay,
no.
Good.
No, I don't read the next issue until we are done talking about the one we're supposed to talk about. So
same here.
That's next.
Go in with have a drink, take a drink beforehand.
I probably need to get drunk to really appreciate it.
What's interesting is we don't talk about the Tales book, but Tales of the Legion of Superheroes issue 325, which also came out around this time, is the last news story before they do the reprints. And they reference the Legion's sub-special in that issue quite a lot.
No, wait. You mean in continuity or just in, advertisements?
No, continuity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Gigi's in it.
Oh, I better go read that again.
Yeah, they reference her involvement. I haven't read the issue too, but I remember that sub-special quite fondly. So we will be doing an episode on it. However, it will not be an episode of the Legion Project. It will be an episode of Tales of the Legion Project. That's right. We're going to take a page from what they're doing, with all the Baxter runs. You have your main series and you have your side series. And our side series of supplemental episodes will be called Tales from the Legion Project. Not even sure if we'll number them. We'll just call it like Tales from the Legion Project, Legion of Substitute Heroes Special. Because most likely they're going to be standalone episodes on a special or the annual that's coming up or Legionnaires 3. Or if we want to talk about Quantum Age from Jeff Lemire, like that would be the perfect place to talk about it. So these are going to be supplemental side episodes that will just drop randomly whenever it comes up. And instead of because the Legion Project, all the episodes correlate to the issue numbers. So we didn't want to do like 12.5 or anything dumb like that. So this is the way to do it. Just Tales of the Legion Project, riffing off of what they're doing with their own book. I ran it by Eric and he thought it was a cool name, so we're going to run with it. And it'll just drop in our feeds just like all these other episodes. And that'll be the next one we do. The next one we do will be the first Tales of the Legion Project on the sub special.
And hopefully it will not be a harbinger of something bad.
No, it's going to be good. You're going to love that special.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, good. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to talk the whole episode, which I already do anyway.
The listeners probably enjoy that more anyway.
No. So that'll be it'll be a nice change of pace for the next episode.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
There's so many things we could do if we really wanted to.
Let's just get through what we need to get through.
I know. I know. I gotta curb my impulses to delve into other things.
Because it'll very shortly we will have to do a lot of those side ones because the Legion's all over the place.
Mm.
You know, we won't do it for just little minor appearances in other books. We're going to try to save it for special, like we said, specials, annuals, miniseries, things that we're going to need more than just like a half hour to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Tune in for that.
Should be fun.
Tune in like we're on the radio. Shows you how old I am. All right, Peter. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Yay, 12 issues, 12 episodes.
12 episodes of this year-long adventure so far. So
yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. I was really, I probably should have talked about this at the top of the show when we were talking about this, but I was kind of nervous about this because this is the most sustained look at any particular series I've ever attempted.
Cool.
And it's especially with something I haven't read. I mean, like I said, we're now in issues that I have not read before.
Right.
And it's one thing to examine and talk about something that you have read. You've had time to digest it and see things differently, especially when you come back to it so many years later. It's quite another to read it for the first time and try and glean or have that same kind of perspective talking with you who does it so well.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, it's good. It's like I said, this has been fun. I'm glad I'm doing this with a co-host and not by myself because I think you complement the things that I miss, that I haven't read or, and you do the research and it's fun. It's fun to bounce off and,
mm-hmm.
And to see what we like about the Legion and what we like about these issues. You're coming at it with new eyes. I'm coming at it with eyes that are slowly remembering these stories and realizing, yeah, this is why these books had an impact on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it reinforces my, that was the other thing I was nervous about. If I really start digging into these issues, do I really like them as much as I think I do? because they're Legion comics, even though I haven't read a chunk of these.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the answer is yes. I still do. I still love these characters. I love this universe. I can't wait to read more.
Yeah, because if this was post 0 Hour Legion, I would not be so thrilled about reading these issues. Trust me. It does not have to. I don't just blanket love Legion issues. So if one comes up that's poop, we'll say it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, and as always, you can give us feedback. Please do. Let us know what you thought of this first year. Let us know what you thought of the Legion sub special if you have it. You can start sending us us emails on the next year of the Legion stories. Like, don't wait for us. We want to hear from you. Peter@thedailyreels.com.
And longboxreview@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, come on, guys. I want to hear what you have to say about the substitute issue special, because
Eric wants people on his side.
No, I just want to get all these different perspectives. I think that would be awesome.
Right.
I'm gonna start hitting people up on Twitter and whatnot.
Oh, good.
Send me your feedback.
Yeah, they have time now, right? They have time to maybe if they're not doing the special sub one, they could at least go read issue 13 and get their opinions in before we read it, before we record it, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's call it a night.
Okay. Long live the Legion Project Podcast.
All right. Here's to another year.
Here is to another year, Peter. Congratulations.
You too. Good night.
Good night.